So in today's Let's Talk Aquatics, we are going to be talking about the fish hierarchy and how you can make one in your tank. Very interestingly, I can't find another video talking about a fish hierarchy in a fish tank, which is very weird considering it is one of the most fascinating parts of the fish tank, and I personally enjoy it the most. Let's talk about the turbulent hierarchy, the hippie hierarchy, and the king hierarchy. So the turbulent hierarchy is the most complicated out of all three, and that's because it's constantly changing or has many fish at the top instead of just one. The hippie hierarchy is where all fish have little to no aggression, or any other creatures. The king hierarchy is when one fish is extremely aggressive to all others. I own 9 fish tanks, and by far the most interesting hierarchy in all of them is my 40-gallon tank with the turbulent hierarchy. The reason this tank is so interesting and so very turbulent is because I have 3 fish from different king hierarchy tanks which I've added into this tank because I do not like the king hierarchy. In fact, I only currently have 1 tank with the king hierarchy because I hate it so much. One of the most interesting parts of keeping a fish tank is picking the fish to go in it. And in this video, I'm going to suggest and tell you how to best make a hippie hierarchy or a simple king or turbulent hierarchy. Turbulent is by far the most interesting option and the one I would urge you to try to make. Making a hierarchy can be very complicated though. In fact, most of the times you'll end up thinking it'll be one way and end up it being the other way. However, hierarchies can of course be corrected by simply adding or removing certain fish. Other ways of correcting a hierarchy would be feeding more or sharing the love by adding more fish to be picked on by the aggressive fish. Anyways, let's talk about my turbulent hierarchy. There are 2 kinds of dominant fish in my hierarchy tank. There is a aggressive dominant fish, and there is a retired dominant fish. The retired dominant of the tank has usually gained the respect of the other fish, and no longer picks on them, however does not get picked on at all because of his past dominance. Whereas the aggressive dominant fish is currently being aggressive to all other tank mates. However, even my aggressive dominant is not aggressive to my retired dominant due to his past dominance. Click away now if you don't want to hear dominant 100,000 more times. Usually the dominants of your turbulent tank would fight. However, because my retired dominant has gained the respect of all other fish in this tank, he is not picked on at all by the aggressive dominant. And you can actually see him here, swimming around not getting picked on by anyone. Some interesting facts about this guy is he is actually 4 years old, and when I put him in here, he was around 3.5. However, somehow, for around 2 to 3 months, he became the aggressive dominant of this tank, which is very weird as a fish as old as he is should not be capable of doing that and still being alive. Besides him occasionally nipping at other fish's fins, he does absolutely nothing and no one is aggressive towards him in the slightest sense. I find his role in this tank very interesting because in all of my other tanks I have ever kept, I have never had a fish quite like him, with 0 aggression and 0 aggression dealt to him in such an aggressive environment such as this tank. And somehow or another, every fish has a behavior revolving around this guy. Next up, we have the fish that absorb/police the tank. These fish will bite at each other and other fish just like this. It barely causes harm to the other fish, however tells them that they are clearly not in control. And when I say police, I mean whenever I add a new fish, these guys are the first ones to go at them. They will nip at them and bite at them and see if they are food, friend, or foe. That's assuming that the aggressive dominant does not get to them first, which usually doesn't happen. As a single individual, these guys aren't very interesting. However, as a pack, they are very intriguing and are like a very tiny pack of piranhas. These guys are black skirt tetras, and there's 17 of them. The reason I got 17 is so they could absorb the love from the dominant fish of this tank. For instance, if there's 17, he can't pick on all of them at once. If there were only a few, he would pick them all off in less than a week. However, because I do have 17 of them, he is not physically capable of particularly badly harming any of them. If you create a turbulent hierarchy, these guys are critical to the hierarchy, because if you do not have someone to absorb love, your hierarchy will very slowly just become a king hierarchy, which is horrible, and I personally hate them. The basic requirements for this fish would be a small to medium-sized fish which can school in large numbers. Depending on the size of the dominant... Hey, what's up? Are you filming a video? Come on, dude, I'm trying to make a video. Ugh, fine. Anyways, depending on the size of the dominant, you're going to want to have more or less of this medium fish. I have 6 of these Danios in this tank as well. They were meant to be a medium fish that was purely eye candy, dishing nor receiving any aggression. However, because of these guys' speed, they actually dish out quite a lot of love and receive quite a lot of love because they often make fights. When I say often, I mean every minute on the minute. Because of their small stature though, they don't do much. This guy is my Siamese algae eater or something like that. He doesn't do much, he does deal a little bit of damage, and he has received quite a lot. However, he is quite pathetic and really just smack dab in the middle. All of my rainbow fish are smack dab in the middle. They deal a little bit of damage and they receive a little bit of damage. They are not by any means the boss of the tank, although when it was originally set up, they were the head of the tank for around a year. I have 2 different species, however they school together, as you can see in this clip. These guys were originally meant to be the dominant, and did fulfill that role for the first year of this tank being set up. However, as of currently, they have fallen into the smack dab middle of the tank, because the other top of the hierarchy have knocked them down. As long as they seem to be happy in this tank, I will be perfectly fine, as long as they do not start to get too heavily loved on by the other top of the hierarchy. So far, these guys seem to be doing quite well. And this is another interesting part of the tank, how these guys were originally the top of the hierarchy for over a year almost, and are now smack dab in the middle. It is extremely interesting and fascinating to watch all of this happen, of course. Next up is Cheesecake. Cheesecake has been dealt no love and gives no love, except for the love that I give him. He is adorable, and the only thing he could possibly hurt would be a shrimp. He is below middle because he gives no love and receives no love. Although he is very interesting to watch in this tank because of the fact that he is given no love and deals no love compared to everyone else who at least is given or gives some small amount. For instance, these guys give no love, however receive a little bit. I started with 8 black tetras, however I am currently down to 6 due to 2 of them being way too small in the very beginning of this tank being set up. However, after that, they have been dealt very little love and do not seem to be in any harm. The simple way to make a turbulent hierarchy is to have 2 or more very dominant fish to give a lot of love. Then the police/absorbent fish to absorb the love and police any new occupants of the tank and put them in their place. The second from last step is to have 1 or 2 groups of small, fast-moving fish to stir up the tank and constantly keep things moving in the turbulent hierarchy. The last step is, please don't do this if you are inexperienced. Also, you want to make sure you have a big enough tank. Personally, I'd recommend a 40-gallon breeder, and also make sure you have lots of hiding spaces, for you don't want to stress these fish out too much. So, the next hierarchy I'm going to be talking about is the hippie hierarchy. There is little to no aggression in the hippie hierarchy, and my hippie hierarchy has one fish and different species of shrimp in it. The simple way to make a hippie hierarchy would be getting many low aggression, slow moving fish or invertebrates. Some fish you could get to create a hippie hierarchy would be guppies, koi catfish, platies, or mollies. Most of those fish are incapable of becoming the dominant of a hierarchy because they are slow and ineffective at giving out love to other fish. My personal hippie hierarchy is mostly consistent of different species of shrimp and of course my one fish. Although I have many other tanks with the same hippie hierarchy, consisting of all fish or mostly fish. The main invertebrate in this tank is, of course, these little brown inbred cherry shrimp. They aren't particularly special and they don't do much. Next up are my vampire shrimp. I got these guys imported from somewhere around the world, and they're awesome and they don't do much. Next up is my Ocellaris catfish. This guy just kind of meanders around and eats the parasites that could possibly infect the shrimp. Therefore, I love him and he is very useful in this tank. And I've actually seen him on top of the vampire shrimp cleaning them off. Next up is my amino shrimp. This guy is just basically a really big cherry shrimp. Of course, he's not red and he's not called a cherry shrimp though, he's called an amino shrimp. Also, this footage is really amazing and I would like you to just enjoy it quickly before continuing the video. Anyways, so this is one of my many hippie hierarchies, and it is done in a 20-gallon long, which is my personal favorite size of tank, and if you were to try to make a hippie hierarchy with, say, guppies and corridoras, I would definitely recommend a 20-gallon long. Last, but definitely not least, we have my king hierarchy. I will actually be removing the dominant fish of this tank very shortly because I hate king hierarchies so much. The simple way to create a king hierarchy would be getting one dominant fish with a bunch of other docile fish and then just letting him slowly rise to the top by bullying everyone else. As I stated, I hate this hierarchy and I will shortly be removing the platinum parrot cichlid in this hierarchy because he is just a bully. And I actually have a coming up video of adding this little guy to a 20-gallon tall so that way he will stop bullying the other fish in this tank. I hope you enjoyed today's Let's Talk Aquatics as much as I did. This video did take me a little bit longer than usual to make, so if you wouldn't mind subscribing and leaving a like, that would be much appreciated. If you have any further questions about how to make a hierarchy or think I explained something wrong in this video, please leave a comment below telling me what I did or didn't do in this video. I hope that you enjoy all of the interesting behaviors that your fish will have. I think it's one of the most fascinating things in keeping fish, and I rarely see people talking about the behaviors of their fish. I mean, they'll talk about this and that, but they don't go into detail, and I gotta say, it's a real shame. And I'm planning on making an in-depth video on all of the behaviors I witness in this fish tank. And if you enjoyed this video, go check out my TikTok and Instagram for high quality footage and photos.